In episode 10 of Trust Factor, one big topic this week, the absence of trust is a risk to all of us. And some recent hot topics I'm going to cover as well. Do you trust all the recent UFO, UAP government news disclosures? And I'm going to talk about a few more aspects related to the meaning of the phrase trust factor. And then I'm going to cover your lack of comments from episode 9 and why I think that happened.
Trust Factor with Rob Greenlee focuses on all aspects to building human trust in online communications.
Thank you for being here with me today. The trust factor in your life is essential and profoundly impacts your happiness, security, and safety. And as we'll find out in this episode and a whole lot more. Let's get into our topics this week. The absence of trust is a significant risk for all of us. Now, this may seem like a redundant topic, but I think this is probably the most important trust factor that I've done to date. I think it encapsulates the concept of what I'm trying to do with Trust Factor, this series, very well, because trust is foundational, and it's an element in virtually every aspect of society. So now, while that can be maybe boring, or it can be thought of as redundant to maybe what I've done in the past, but I'm really trying to drive this message home. It's really essential for maintaining social order in our world and personally in our lives, promoting economic growth, and ensuring political stability, and fostering international cooperation on a more macro level, and more. There's so many elements of this. And I'm going to run through a lot of them here just to lay that out. When trust erodes, really in these 9 areas. So I'm going to run through, if you don't have trust in these 9 areas, you've got a problem. And it may be, what I'm going to share here may be an indication of why we're having so many problems in our world today. So the number one, and we've talked about this even back on episode 8 of this series, 7, 8, 1 and 2, if you wanted to go back and watch the topic on relationships. But social relationships suffer if there is not trust. And I think that's probably obvious and inherent at a personal level. A lack of trust can lead to a breakdown in relationships, causing strife or discord, and also social fragmentation. Without trust, interpersonal relationships would struggle to form and maintain, leading to a breakdown of social cohesion, people willing to come together in communities, and could become fragmented with increased isolation and a diminishing level of mutual support for each other. And I do think that has happened after the lockdowns that happened because of the recent pandemic. So I think we have had some of these impacts happen to us. And I don't know that I've talked about that here, but it's not so much a trust issue as much as it doesn't bring people together. So number 2 is economic activities slow down without trust. And if you think about what's happening in our world today, how we're just lacking in economic activity, people are losing their jobs. I think that we're in this major kind of change in our economy, our financial system, our social structure. And I think trust may be at the foundation of why we're struggling right now. And because economic activities, if they slow down, that has ripple effects across our culture and our society and obviously our economy. Businesses rely on trust with their customers and amongst themselves, because without it, transactions may slow or entirely stop. And that's kind of like the flow of life for business. And that can lead to economic stagnation and, I hate to say, but decline, and create economic instability, which I think is a factor that we have in our world today. Trust is a fundamental pillar of our economic system, really, at the core of it. In the absence of trust, trade, commerce, business operations can be severely disrupted. Just a simple example, if consumers don't trust a business to provide quality goods and services, they're less likely to make purchases and leading to an economic downturn. So this may have a foundational impact on what's happening in our world today. And the next one is governance gets difficult. Trust is a crucial factor in government and in governance, whether it's an institution or a leader, right? When people lose trust in their leaders and institutions, social order breaks down and it leads to instability and political conflicts and even political chaos. And I do think that's what we're seeing in our world today is political chaos. And the question you have to ask, is this being driven by a lack of trust? No matter what side of the political spectrum, trust in governance and institution is critical for societal stability. Without it, there could be civil unrest. There's certainly concerns about civil unrest. We've had the attacks on the Capitol a few years ago, a lack of public cooperation. We're so divisive now. People don't cooperate with each other. And in creating laws and having some cohesion on this. And it also creates an atmosphere where it's easier to potentially have corruption. You can pull this apart and really think about the impacts of this on our society. And it may be more related to trust than we have even thought about. And the next one is decreased innovation. So as we think about collaboration and shared knowledge are vital to our growth as a society and our growth as an economy. Without collaborative trust, there would be less collaboration, leading to lower technological and scientific progress. So the next one here is international relations deteriorate if there's a lack of trust in the international scale or global scale. A lack of trust between nations can hamper diplomatic relations and cooperation, increase the risk of misunderstandings, conflicts, and wars. Let's think about that. We're in the middle of a war with Russia. Now, granted, it's a proxy war through Ukraine, but nonetheless, the world is constantly in conflict. And you have to wonder if foundationally this is related to the level of trust that exists in our human species right now. And the next one is diminished well-being. On a personal level, a lack of trust can lead to anxiety, fear, and stress, and negatively impact our mental health and our overall health and well-being. These are things that have significant impact on all of our lives. There's no question about it. And the next one here is inefficient systems. So without trust, we need additional checks and balances, and surveillance might be necessary in systems like education, healthcare, transportation, and that could lead to having some processes out there in our society and our culture and our structure and our infrastructure can lead to some inefficiencies. So in the next one, which will probably be pretty obvious to most everybody, is the health crisis intensifies if we don't have trust. In the context of health, trust is necessary for effective public health policies and strategies for all of us as a society, as a culture. For example, pandemics, right, could become more challenging to address if we have another one, if trust is gone, if we just don't have confidence, which is another word for trust in our healthcare system to give us accurate and safe treatments or advice. I think our country here in the US has a lot of challenges in this area about how we tell people what's healthy and what's not. There's so much corruption and interest, economic interests and corporate interests behind everything that we do now, that it may not be in our best health interests. And these are fractures in our trust. And then the last one here is climate change solutions are hindered as well. If there's no trust that there's even climate change problem, or if there isn't trust in the solutions to these issues, then I think we have a problem. I think we have a big problem. And addressing these global challenges, like climate change or not, requires trust and cooperation between nations. Because without trust, such cooperation and efforts could and will likely falter in exasperating and making worse the things that we're trying to solve. So, therefore, maintaining and building trust at all levels, personal, international, is critical for a well functioning, peaceful, and prosperous world. So, that's the end of the first segment of the show. There's another one coming up here. And do you trust all the recent UFO and UAP government news disclosures? What I wanted to share is here over the last week or so, the US government has come out and said that they are going to release some documents about the information that they have about UFO. So the Senate is moving towards requiring that the government release US government UFO records. So the Senate in the coming days is expected to consider a bipartisan measure. So I guess it hasn't actually been signed yet, but to consider a bipartisan measure that would compel the US government release these documents that maybe they've been holding back from us or are top secret about possible UFO sightings after decades of stonewalling or keeping these under wraps. So we have some of the major leaders in the Senate coming forward. The Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, a Democrat, has teamed up with Senator Mike Rounds, a Republican, in leading an effort to force the disclosure of information relating to what the government officially calls unidentified anomalous phenomenon. We shall see. But this is an interesting take, and why is this happening now is the question that I have about all this. So I wanted to show another screenshot that shows another perspective on this same topic. And it's from the New York Times. Check out this headline. Quite a contrast to the US government saying, we're going to release official information about what's happening. And here's the New York Times speculating on what information the US government has about UFOs and UAPs. Many military UFO reports are just foreign spying, like the Russian air balloons or airborne trash. Seems like a weird topic for an article on this subject. It certainly is not taking it very seriously. And the subhead of this is forget space aliens or hypersonic technology. Classified assessments show that many episodes of this in the record have ordinary explanations. So why is the New York Times downplaying what could happen here? And from what I gather, hypersonic technology is something that's here already. So I'm not sure. I believe Russia has missiles that are hypersonic. Just on the face of it, this New York Times article seems a little sketchy. What is the agenda there of that? Is it playing into people's fears or just skepticism? It has screenshots on the article from actual footage of these airborne objects that don't look like they were made by us, but who knows? Maybe they were. I'm going to share you another screenshot. I'm going to back this one down, and I'm going to share another one here about a recent conference at the National Press Club that is talking about this very topic. There is an organization that's been around for a while now, and it's called the UFO UAP Disclosure Project. This was a conference that was held at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. on June 12th, 2023. So it was about a little over a month ago that this happened. And I do have some video from it, but let me play a little bit. I can give you a little bit of background on this. The person that you're going to see on the screen here is Dr. Stephen Greer, and he's the world's leading authority on the subject of UFOs and UAPs in advanced energy and propulsion system, and has gathered an extensive archive of intelligence of compelling evidence on the subject of extraterrestrial intelligence and covert government projects that are related to this that are being run illegally. So he's captured this over the past 30 years, and he briefed the audience and had a panel at this, but he's also briefed US presidents and senior government officials about the documents and evidence that he has that a lot of these covert government projects are basically black operations that not even our leaders in our government even know about. So this is an interesting example here, and I can play a video from it that will show you what I'm talking about here. So let me pull that up. So what you're going to see is the National Press Club for this conference on the Disclosure Project from June 12th.
And just a quick trip through some of the previous witnesses. We had Sergeant Clifford Stone. He was on an NBC team, nuclear, biological, chemical, back in the 60s, was actively involved in retrieving extraterrestrial vehicle and bodies, what have you. They were called EBINs, extraterrestrial biological entities. We have his testimony. It's there for anyone to see. We have people like John Callahan, who was the top accident investigator at the FAA when the Japan Airlines event happened in the 1980s during the Reagan years, and they tried to cover it up. He took the original FAA tracking tapes. The Disclosure Project have the originals, and you're welcome to see them. Those of you in the media, we can try to get those to you. So all of these sort of testimonies and witnesses have come forward already, but now we're at the stage where there's real utility, because the official law now is that the government has mandated the Pentagon, the intelligence community, to research this and report back to Congress. Now, there's a problem we'll get into a moment with that whole process, which is important that you understand, and particularly the media understand. But first, I want to tell you what we've handed off this week to the Congress and to the White House and to the Pentagon Aero office, the RO office that's tasked with investigating this. So we can go through the list of the material in the archive. It has government documents in the tens of thousands from all those countries: United States, Canada, Australia, Russia, United Kingdom, and others. We have 145 top secret facilities, some of which are black sites that are named and on a map, and you'll see them in a moment. The supporting documentation of it are in the archive, meaning the witnesses' testimony, who they were, when they were there, where the locations is, sometimes up to where the gate is. And that's been handed over to the United States government this week. There are 752 and counting whistleblowers who've come forward over the years. Some of them are now deceased, but what's important, even the ones who are deceased, if you go to their history and their command and what they provided, there is an investigative thread to follow back in. Very important. There are also files with all these witness testimonies that have been provided up to date. In the archive are 121. We learned of another one last night from a very high level whistleblower who is not ready to come forward. So there's actually 122 crash retrieval cases of these UAPs. And those are documented. Michael Schratt, who is an aerospace historian and is working full-time with us beginning in November, had worked for Lockheed, but not the Skunk Works, on conventional operations. And he is doing those investigations for us and also the beautiful illustrations of what these witnesses have had to share, and you will see those. Then we also have the documents that includes names of witnesses. In other words, government documents that are not declassified that we have. Now, we'll get into this in a minute. And there are many deep throats who provide intel in the background who are working with us, some of whom are very senior in these operations. Others are people who have just incidentally been involved. Okay, next. So this is just a thumb pictures of all these guys that we already have come forward. They're there for you to see. They run from NASA folks and all that. It's in the YouTube channel. It's in the archive. Those were done. All these were up to 2001. So we're talking a long time ago, but those exist. It's perhaps a tree that fell in the woods a lot of you didn't know about. Next. And I want to go through this very quickly. This is just a scrolling list of the witness list. Each one of these witnesses has a file where they have either been interviewed or provide intelligence and corresponded with me, and that I have debriefed personally over the last 30 years. So you're going to see this goes on for about 100 named persons, and then it becomes a black list. It just has to be blacked out. Why? I'm not holding anything back except what I've been requested to by people whose confidence I have told them I will keep. So I'm a medical doctor. We understand patient doctor confidentiality, like an attorney understands that. But until these guys want to be unmasked and come forward, we will not disclose their names, except the redacted list is something available to the media and to the public now. In addition to that, and it's very important, the unredacted list and the full files, including all my correspondence files, are in the unredacted archive. It's about, let's see, isn't it cool that you can put terabytes on something like this? This is all it is, but it's about a terabyte. We have about 8 terabytes of information. We're in the process of scanning it and trying to put it into a searchable database. This has been provided to the intelligence community, as I mentioned, Pentagon, Congress, and the White House. It is also the redacted version would be available to the media if you can help us get it on a hard drive. We're really not funded properly, and each of these costs several $100s. So we gave it 1,000 of them. It's more than we've ever had. But nevertheless, it is an open archive. Eventually, we want to have it on an internet site. But the names that you're seeing now, you're going to see all their information is blacked out. And it's because they've asked not to be named. Now, they can be known by people who are working in a SCIF and have a vault and who have the ability to then pursue it in the interest of national security. That has been provided to these key offices. So I just wanted to give you that as an overview of how the list was constructed. It is by no means complete. We have a new whistleblower coming forward every week or two now at this point. And Michael Schratt's nodding his head. Yeah, this has become a torrent. And so we want to set up a mechanism. We're recommending that you'll hear what our recommendations are for the president and Congress to resolve this crisis. Next. So I wanted to mention that these bases, if you look at them, let's go to, this is where all these illegal operations have happened. I'm saying illegal because we can prove that this information, as Senator Inouye said, you'll hear his statement in a moment, has been run by a very shadowy, deep black operation. And we're not talking the legal black budget of the United States. We're talking about projects that presidents and CI directors and secretaries of defense, members of the Congress who have a need to know and are cleared TSSCI in SCIFs, secure compartmented information facilities, have been blatantly either gaslit, denied access. That is the foundation of everything we've done, is that these projects are a priori illegal and therefore unconstitutional and have to be reined in, because not doing so is a threat to the national security. So here is your list. I'm not going to go through 145 sites. Some of them are black sites. Some of them are bases about Wright-Patterson, Edwards, Nellis, Area 51. But all of them are based on witness testimony and intelligence we've gathered over the last 30 years. And it's time for it to be disclosed. And so now you have it. Next. Here's one. And people go out in the Mojave Desert. Michael Schratt took this picture when it was okay to fly near it in a small private plane. It is a site for the Lockheed Range underground entrance. What's in there? There are man-made, and this is the big story, no one's telling you. A large number of the UAPs are in fact deep black budget electrogravitic electromagnetic field propulsion devices based on the study of extraterrestrial vehicles that began in the 1940s. That is a fact. We can prove it. So when you see these sort of places, just remember many of them, I want to be careful what I'm saying here. Someone who is in charge of the black budget of the United States in 2022 went out to the Lockheed Skunk Works based on some information he had. He was shown a bunch of old jet aircraft. He knew he was being gaslit.
Okay, I figure I played enough of that, but it does raise some questions in my mind about what is going on here. What are we being told? Is there trust in what we're being told? And why would we be told? Is the other question. Seems to me like if there is advanced technology, that the government would like to keep it secret from us. So will we find out what's really going on here? And do we trust that we're being told what's accurate? That's always the question here. So I'll leave it up to you. There is a movie that you can see that Dr. Greer has put out that you might want to go check out. It's available, I believe, on YouTube and a lot of the streaming video sites right now. And it's called The Lost Century and How to Reclaim It. And it was put out on June 6th, 2023. And it details a lot, because I've seen it, about the technology that has been withheld from all of us, whether it be local inventors that are right here on this earth that have come up with amazing ways of generating electricity out of the air. Nikola Tesla invented some methodology for creating electricity that has been withheld and suppressed from our society and our world. And for what purpose was this done? So that's what this movie is about. And if you want to see it, it's available out there. It's not being censored. It's not being taken down. But it is something that you have to build trust to be able to accept that maybe what this movie is telling us is accurate and true. So I will put links in the show notes to all the resources and all the things that I've talked about here, the National Press Club event, the YouTube video that I played for you. It's about 3 hours long. So there's a lot of information. And for some reason, the world is changing right now. The question is, do we trust what it's changing into? So that's all I wanted to cover on this big of a topic at this time, but I would hope that you would trust me and my gut instinct on these things. I've been doing some research on this. I'm not trying to play some conspiracy hoax on you with any of this. I think this could be serious, but we could be being played, though. We could be not being told the whole truth here. That is a definite possibility. So you kind of have to approach this like anything else. Do we trust what we're being told? So the next segment of the show, I wanted to talk a little bit about, and some of these topics are a little redundant, to, I think, some of the earlier episodes that I've done. But what I'm wrestling with is this concept of talking about things that are similar, but in a slightly different way as we look at the trust factor that exists in our world, in our society today. And the first one really is deep diving into the meaning of the phrase trust factor. And why did I pick that term? What are the implications of that term? And what's the spectrum of the kind of content and topics that I can discuss in this series? And really, the meaning of the term trust factor really is some key things here. Trustworthiness. The trust factor itself as a phrase reflects the perceived reliability and dependability of an individual, organization, or entity. So when I talk about topics like this, and I think to some degree, the spectrum of trustworthiness is broader than even that. By saying individual, organization, and entity may not be as big as it is, but that certainly does cover a lot of ground. And really, it's a measure of how much confidence others have in their ability to act in an honest and consistent and ethical manner. That's, I think, at the core, that's the challenge of our day. And the next one of it is decision making. So the trust factor in decision making, trust plays a crucial role in the decision making process. When there is high trust between parties, it can lead to a more efficient collaboration and to agreements and to transactions. Trust can influence choices in business partnerships, investments, and personal relationships, quite obviously. And then the next aspect of this is reputation. The trust factor is closely linked to reputation. Positive reputation obviously builds trust, while a negative reputation can erode trust. So those are obvious concepts. And trustworthiness is often built over time through consistent actions and transparent communications and fulfilling promises. And I think we all struggle with this. I think these are all things that as a human being who can procrastinate or can have the wrong intent on things can make mistakes. And thus your reputation could be eroded by making mistakes. But humans are not perfect either. But trust is always there, and that trust factor is increasingly a phrase that's coming up more and more in so many aspects of how I think about the world. And then the next one is risk assessment. The trust factor needs to be considered when assessing risks that are associated with a particular situation. What's the trust rating of a particular situation? Say, this can help individuals or organizations evaluate the likelihood of trust that may be breached, compromised. These are risk assessments. Assessing the risk factors or the trust factors can help you determine whether to engage in something with someone else, invest, or just rely on someone. And then the next one is trust indicators. Various indicators contribute to the trust factor, right? These may be honesty, transparency, competence, track record, references, reviews, testimonials, certifications, and security measures. Sounds like a process that we all have to go through when we want to get a job. Trust is a big part of that. In summary, the trust factor really relates to the level of trust and confidence in someone or something that has an impact on decision making, building relationships, and the perception of reliability, which may at this point be pretty obvious if you've watched all the episodes in this series. Trustworthiness, reputation, risk assessment, and trust indicators are the key here. So that's that segment. That actually wraps up most of the segments in the show today. But I did want to talk a little bit about the sponsor of mine, StreamYard, which you can see the logo up here. I'm using StreamYard to produce this series and this video program. It's been a terrific platform for me. StreamYard is a leading live video and recording platform for high quality audio recording, and that can really help take your content to the next level. So if you want to do audio or audio and video, this is a terrific platform, or actually webinars too. Now you can effortlessly produce low cost audio and video podcasts perfectly for YouTube. You can obviously use this for podcasts as well because the audio quality is really good. And you can cut this up and use it in its complete form or in segments in social media platforms too. StreamYard just announced AI-based audio filtering to eliminate background noise. So you can record in a lot of different type of recording environments or recording situations. So if you have an interest in producing any video content or audio podcasts for your company or your personal brand, this is a terrific platform to work with. Use my promo code ROBG, R-O-B and the letter G. Just go to streamyard.com/RobG and sign up for a free trial and lifetime discount. StreamYard is where content begins. This show is also a audio podcast, so you can pick this program up in any of your podcast listening platforms. It is a couple of episodes behind on the audio side compared to the video side, since it is primarily a video program. So given that this is on YouTube, you can like or subscribe right below. So get that, click those buttons and those bells. That would be fantastic. So the last segment or the last part of the show, I wanted to talk about comments and show feedback from episode 9, or I guess might be a fair way to say, or is the lack of it, I wanted to talk about here. So I think one of the reasons that happened from last week's episode is because of the serious topics that I talked about in last week's episode. Trusting AI-based law enforcement of human laws. That is a concept that is coming rapidly to all of our lives. I also believe that human freedoms to actually break the law is going to be challenged. And even social norms and laws or rules, might be a better way of saying it, may be challenged by this tech AI surveillance and enforcement control. Technology enables enforcement of these human laws and social norms. So that's a pretty serious topic. I would hope that there would be some folks that would want to give me some feedback on that, because I did share some elaborate thoughts on that. And the last topic I talked about, which maybe people didn't want to talk about too much or comment on, was, do you trust climate change? Do you trust it as being a real thing? Or is it, as some people say, it's an exaggeration? I don't doubt that there is climate change. The actual concept, this whole earth has been changing its climate for millions of years. But the question gets back to, is it being exaggerated right now to create fear? Or is there something foundational about it? There's people that are on both sides of the fence. And who do you trust? Who do you trust to give you the accurate information? Who has a vested interest in driving an agenda that's fear-based around climate change or global warming or any of these concepts? But I do think that there is climate change. There's no question about it. the question gets back to, really, do we trust what we're being told about the urgency of it and its potential catastrophe that is being portrayed out there? And do we need to act in the next 5 years? Also, our earth is going to boil over or something like that. I think they're exaggerations to produce an outcome. And so these could be the topics that maybe you felt uncomfortable talking about. And I'm hoping that you will give me feedback on all the topics that I have in this show. And so I wanted to share ways that you can reach me to share your thoughts. So I have an email address, rob.greenlee@gmail.com. If you have any topic ideas for me too, I would love to hear that as well. I'm also available on Twitter, and those are two terrific places. And you want to jot my address down if you're listening to the podcast, it's just rob.greenlee@gmail.com. And then my Twitter address is @robgreenlee as well. And if you're interested in getting StreamYard going, I put on the screen here too the StreamYard address. It's streamyard.com/RobG. And that's where you'll find that. So thank you for joining me today in episode 10 of this series. I certainly appreciate it. I usually put out episodes on Mondays. So come back and check out the channel every Monday. And I certainly appreciate you being here today with me. And thank you so much. Bye.
Trust Factor with Rob Greenlee focuses on all aspects to building human trust in online communications.